Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CircuitPython Weekly for Thursday, 27 December 2018. We moved from Monday this week because of the holiday and chose to do it on Thursday this week. Um, we have this meeting every week, except when there's US holidays. It's a chance to get together, talk about what everyone's doing, what sorts of things are going on, what kind of projects people are doing, and just get an idea of how things are going with CircuitPython in general. The meeting is in three parts. In the beginning, I do the state of CircuitPython, where we'll go over how things are going with CircuitPython itself and the libraries. The second section is hug reports. This is a chance for people to call out other people for the great things that they're doing in the community. This is something we actually took from the Adafruit weekly internal meeting. And we think it's super important because there's not always an option to call people out for the good things they're doing. And so we try to make sure that that's something that we do. The third section is status reports, where everyone can talk about what they've been up to for the previous week and what they're going to be working on for the rest of the week. That's a software developer type thing where that's actually how this whole meeting started, was giving us a chance to sync up, and we expanded it to include the community, so we know what everyone's doing, which is always excellent. And actually, there is a fourth section called In the Weeds. And what we do is we save sort of long form discussions for that time. So that way, if people who are watching this video just want to get the initial info, they can watch the beginning, and then any kind of discussions that we want to do at the end where they may be more complex or involved, we put those in the weeds and talk about that then. So I will go ahead and get started with the state of CircuitPython. So overall, this week we had 139 pull requests merged, which is amazing. We had 10 authors. There are a couple that I've never seen before. I want to say call out 83 and Carl FK, I believe, are the two that seem new. So we had 10 authors and 6 reviewers. So thanks to everybody who reviewed. And overall, we had 16 issues closed by 6 people and 9 opened by 7 people. So that's a net decrease, which is good. And also the fact that it was quite a large number of people who were opening and closing issues is also excellent. So let's talk about the core. So on CircuitPython itself, we had 5 pull requests merged. The 2 new authors are on the core. So that's Carl FK and 83. Thank you very much, both of you, for contributing. And we had 1 reviewer, Dan Halbert. So thank you so much for keeping up with the PRs this week. I know Scott's been out, so Dan has been rocking it. Total download stats for 4.0 Alpha 5, which is the current alpha release, is 406 downloads, which is great. Again, the most downloads appear to be the Trellis M4 Express, which is not at all surprising. And other than that, a lot of the other ones were fairly even. For our current stable release, we had 6,948 downloads, which obviously that's the one that more people are currently working with, and as usual, Circuit Playground Express leads that. So we can move on to, I'm not sure if that's since the last meeting or if that's overall. I don't remember that. Summersoft might know. TG Techie asked if that was since the last meeting. So in terms of libraries, we have a library tracking issue, which I've linked in the notes, which covers everything that I'm about to discuss. We had 134 pull requests merged, so that's where our giant number came from. We had 6 authors and 5 reviewers, which is great. So thank you very much to everybody who put in PRs with that. 134 is a very massive number. We did um, a sweep updating README files, so that's why that number is so high. We have 7 open pull requests right now. We've had 9 issues closed by 5 people and 7 opened by 6 people, giving us 61 total open issues at the moment. Below that in the notes is any other issues that are available to work on with those library repos. It's a great way to get started with CircuitPython is to take a look at issues on libraries and see what things can be fixed up. Some of them are very simple, and so if you ever want to get started contributing, feel free to get a hold of us. We can help you with that process, and it's a great place to start. So overall, I want to say thank you to everyone for an amazing 2018. We say code plus community equals CircuitPython, and we mean it. Without the community, CircuitPython is simply code. We've had so many new contributors and new community members this year. We began on 3.0 at the end of last year, and we released it in July of this year. We are currently working on 4.0, which is going to bring Bluetooth support to the new NRF 52840 boards. Our community has been growing, and it's been wonderful to see all the projects and ideas members have been working on throughout the year. So thank you to everyone for being such an important part of what we do, and we are looking forward to seeing what comes next. We're incredibly grateful to all of you for being a part of this adventure, and we're super excited to continue into 2019. So thank you to everyone who's been involved. It's been an amazing year, and it's going to only get better. So that is the overall state of CircuitPython in the libraries. And the next thing we're going to do is hug reports. So hug reports are done as a round robin where we will start at, I will start, and then we'll go down the list alphabetically. If you're lurking, we will skip you. And if you are text only, you can type into the chat, and I will read it out and we'll put it in the notes. I will start as an example and then we'll go down the list. So I have a pretty long list of hug reports today. First and foremost, congratulations to Scott. He got married and he's on a trip to Iceland. So I wish you all the best and hope that you have a wonderful time. We're looking forward to seeing you back, but I hope that you're having an amazing time while you're gone. I want to give a shout out to TG Techie for some epic linting. That was one of the biggest linting numbers that I've ever seen, and you plowed through all of it. I'm super proud of you. That was really amazing. To Dan H for keeping up with all the PRs while Scott is gone. Want to call out Lady Ada for all the graphics work over the holidays, and to Jerry for testing all of the things. You two have been rocking it out real hard. Thanks to Brennan for merging my PyPI PRs. They're fairly boilerplate, but there's easy things to miss, and so I'm really grateful that Brennan has been keeping up with that as well. I want to thank Carter, Andon, and Mr. Certainly for keeping Discord happy over the holidays. We had very minimal moderation issues, but still things that needed to be dealt with, and most of the time, by the time I got to it, it had already been handled. So thank you guys for keeping up with that. It makes my life a lot easier and makes Discord a great place to be. I want to thank Dan for taking notes for the meetings today. I want to thank Roy for helping me test OBS before the meeting today. I want to thank Phil and Roy for running backup on the meeting recording. And once again, I want to thank everyone for amazing 2018. Thank you again for being part of this adventure, and I can't wait to see what 2019 brings. So that is my hug reports. Next up, we have Lady Ada, who is typing. Hug report to Katney, myself, for many PyPI. To Jerry N for Wi-Fi pair coding, project pair coding and testing. To Dave Estelles for helping Noe and Pedro with their ball drop project. And a group hug for 2018. What a year. That's my hugs. Thanks, Lady Ada. All right, next up is Roy.
Just a general hug report for the state of CircuitPython since I last looked at it, and to well, everybody for all the great contributions. It's such a great project.
All right. Excellent. Thank you. All right, Sean Heimel.
Nothing new for the past week, but group hugs to everyone.
Excellent. All right, next up is Summersoft. You're unmuted, but I can't hear you. Okay, we'll circle around. TG Techie, do you have any hug reports?
Hi, I do. I have a hug report for you, Katney, Summersoft, and let me check, Cater, for helping me so much with learning about linting, which I didn't know was a thing, and for helping me chug through the enormous list of things to fix. And the code reviews. Thank you, Summersoft. Your advice was incredibly helpful. Thank you.
You did a really great job with that.
Thank you. It means a lot.
All right. Next up, Adafruit.
Oh, hi. That's me, Phil.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna be I'll be in the weed section. Hug reports to everybody, of course.
Excellent. All right. Next up is Brent.
Hug report to Jerry for continued testing of Tiny Laura, helping me work through a very confusing recent PR. Scott for wedding, and for everybody working on 4.0, thanks for the graphics work. And a group hug for CircuitPython in 2018.
Thank you. All right, Carter.
Just a happy holidays and a group hug from me this week.
Excellent, thanks. C. Grover.
Yeah, big group hug today. I appreciate all the mentoring that I received from the team over the past year. 2018 was a real growth year for me, and I really do appreciate that.
Okay. All right, the next two are lurking. So next up we have Dan H.
I want to thank Jerry and Lady Ada for working on the coprocessor Wi-Fi stuff, which is a whole new product direction that we can do, which is really great. It makes it a lot easier to use the Wi-Fi chips, and it means we can drop support for mixed Wi-Fi and CircuitPython chips like ESP8266. Thanks to TAC for continuing working on NRF52 stuff. In the sort of ideas about how to do asynchronous computing with CircuitPython, Notro and Bernhard Boser, a professor at Berkeley, have both submitted some ideas recently, and Notro has several sort of speculative pull requests and suggestions, which are some very interesting ideas to simplify doing async stuff. And finally, Aerofarn and 8.3 submitted some new translations, and we also have other people's translations in the works. So the translation stuff is going on in the background and is working out really well. Thank you all. Okay.
Excellent. Thanks, Dan. Jerry.
Yeah, thanks to Lady Ada for all the work on the ESP 8266 and ESP32 AT control stuff. It's really come along, and it's working really well. And also for the work she did on the new frame buff and graphic support stuff. That's really nice to see. to attack for the quick fix to the to a lingering issue that was there with the NRF 5280 UART. Just got fixed and looks like it's working really well, and really nice quick turnaround on that. And Kattni and Summersoft, you really made my inbox feel necessary this week. Thanks.
You are welcome. All right, Summersoft, are you sorted? You're super quiet. Do you want to type it into the chat?
It's typed into the notes, so you want to.
Yep, I'll go ahead and read it.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. So Summersoft said, oh, typing. Hug report to Kattni for merging all of the README updates. I had the easy part, and to everyone else for taking the inbox flood in stride. To TG Techie for the CircuitPython GFX library work, and the last group hug of 2018. Been a great year. Thanks to all of you. All right, and that is hug reports. Next up is status updates. This is a chance for everyone to discuss what they've done over the last week, or since the last meeting, which has actually been longer than a week this week, and to talk about what they're going to be doing over the course of the next week until the next meeting, which is also longer than a week this time. So I will start, and then we'll do the round robin again, where we'll go down the list, and everybody can talk about what they've done and what they're going to be doing. This can be anything from core work to a project you might have worked on to any kind of thing that you might be doing. We'd love to hear about everything. So I will get started. So last week, the week before the holiday, I was in Chicago for a week, and I did 2 CircuitPython workshops. Those went great. We now have more than 50 new CircuitPython community members to look forward to. We did the inbox flood that everyone was referring to is that we migrated everything from travisci.org to travisci.com, and that meant that we needed to update all of the READMEs to reflect that change. So we had to do PRs to every single repo and merge all of those, and that meant multiple emails for every single one of those. So thank you everyone for dealing with that, but that is done, and now everything's up to date. The badges go to the proper place, so when you click the build badge, you will get to the new home of all of our repos. While I was on my way to and from Chicago, I deprecated a number of Python and MicroPython libraries and guides, stuff that we're not supporting anymore, and so we just need to get it. We need to get it deprecated, and we got through some of that. It hasn't been supported in a long time, so it's good to get that moved, and we have CircuitPython libraries to replace a lot of them, so it's good to get those linked and issues moved and that sort of thing. And all of the other things I forgot I did. So beyond that, keeping up with library work, we have some new libraries. This week I will be adding a Sharp Memory Display and PCD 8544 to PyPI. There's some other various things that I need to do with the repos. There are now, if you look in the notes, 120 libraries with commits since the last release because we updated the build badge. So I would appreciate any assistance on doing releases on all of the libraries to get that down. it's something we should do because we need to be able to use that AdaBot check to know what libraries need releases. And at the moment, it just looks like all of them do because they do. So if anybody wants to help with that, please feel free to get a hold of me, and I will let you know like what needs to happen with that. It's a real simple thing to do, but help would be useful. Okay, I haven't updated the library. Lady Ada said if you assign some to me, I'll do them right now. I haven't updated the CircuitPython library tracking issue recently, so that is a bad place to look. And the current notes have that collapsed, so I'll have to run AdaBot myself and then get that info to you. So, all right. So I need the ServoKit Featherwing guide is live. I need to update the shield and hat guide still, and it still needs to be tested on the Pi hat. I'm going to be picking up some GitHub issues that need to be cleaned up. And then also, as a side note, I'm looking into automating more of the Pi PI process. This is something I will want to discuss with Summersoft. And we have some other minor issues with Cookie Cutter that keep cropping up that we need to look into why they are why they're happening. So that's something to deal with later. And that is my current status update. Lady Ada, what are you up to?
Okay, sorry, can you hear me?
I can.
This is my first. Oh, amazing. Okay, so I'm doing a lot of graphics and Wi-Fi stuff because we're going to be doing display I/O soon, but there's still a couple of libraries that were dependent on frame buff. So I think I got them all. I might add ST7565, which is a pretty simple monochrome display. If there's other monochrome displays that people use, like 1-bit displays, similar to the Sharp or Nokia or ST7565, now would be a good time to put an issue in because I can kind of do them all at once. And then I'm going to be moving on to adding pillow image support into the frame buff object, which will allow Linux users to use all those monochrome displays, kind of like, a Raspberry Pi or something. Then I'll be moving on to the RGB graphics stuff. Again, we'll have a lot of that in display I/O, but I'd like to have like a software fallback, especially for we'll just re-implement a lot of this stuff for Linux to have display I/O capabilities. That's why it's worth doing, I think. Meanwhile, I'm also kind of poking slowly at adding FT232H support to Blinka. I don't really have time to do that, but if someone out there has any experience with FT232H, is interested in doing that, some help would be useful. We've got some code, but it's one of those things that's like you have to test on Mac, you have to test on Windows, you have to test on Linux, and each one's a little bit different. Very exciting. But that would allow people to use CircuitPython on a Windows or Mac computer using an FT232H chip to interface with hardware, but still using the CircuitPython library interface. It'd be interesting.
Nice.
Yeah, it's nice, except it's the FT232H, which is terrible. Jerry asked, will the new frame buff graphics stuff work with the mini TFT feathering? Yes, that's the RGB graphics. I believe the mini TFT is an ST7735, so that is one of the RGB displays that's supported. So theoretically, once that pull request is in, it should sort of just magically work because it's a type. We'll just have to set the right size and display offset. It's one of those just like you have to go through and try each one, and like it's very exciting, and each one's a little bit different. Yay, hardware. I'm also doing Wi-Fi stuff. People who want to jump in and try the Wi-Fi coprocessor stuff, now's a really good time. It's actually sort of stabilizing. I might tweak a little bit some of the APIs to add proper socket interfacing. Again, have you done BSD sockets? Do you just love that? Now's a really excellent time to join in the party to implement BSD socket support over AT commands. And I'll be doing a lot of the work, so you just have to kind of test it and try it out. But people who've done that kind of stuff before, especially, would be super appreciated, especially because sockets are kind of old and clunky, but are the standard interface that people use. And then we'll kind of be doing that for the next week. And then when Scott returns, we'll probably look at display IO and frame buff and GFX and see how that all works out. And but all the libraries will be cleaned up and ready to go, so that will be it'll be ready for the switch over to display IO.
Excellent. All right, thank you. Next up is Roy.
So I've jumped back into the RGB LED stuff to sort of try to finish that project up, which is the RGB LED and pixel buff stuff. The pixel buff being a C implementation of a bunch of the logic needed for both dot star and NeoPixel to accelerate those for larger arrays and strips. And I'm just sort of the piece that's hanging me up right now is figuring out how to implement the auto write stuff while I'm. That's sort of, I think, for in the weeds later, but
Okay.
the work is progressing. The re-implementations of the NeoPixel class turned out to be like 5 lines because the rest is all in C now. So I'm hoping the performance gains will be incredible. I haven't actually benchmarked in a while. And so, but I also managed to update the pixel buff code to compile against the latest master, so it seems to work.
Nice.
Although Travis hates me, I think it doesn't like the fact that my branch can't upload assets to S3.
All right. Excellent, thank you. Sean, what are you up to?
Nothing real new this week, just basically taking it off. But I did notice that what do I need to do to get stuff into the releases? And I don't know if this is an in the weeds question, because I noticed the last release of CircuitPython didn't include the MKR0 stuff. Don't know who you need to talk to make sure that's in there.
So it actually will be in there as of Alpha 6.
Oh, okay. So it's going to make it in there. We're just behind.
Yeah, because we would have the Alpha 5 release would have been done before it was added, and we have it set up so that we will have proper releases as of Alpha 6. But for right now, you need to grab it off of the S3 bucket.
S3. Okay.
So that's how we're handling it in between. The same thing happened with the trellis. We released the trellis before we released the releases. So it's just a matter of the cycle being the way the cycle works.
Right, I just missed it. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Summersoft. You turned green, but I can't hear you. All right. So I will read it off. Last week, library README updates for the Travis badge. This week, unsure and open to suggestion. Maybe I should reattack frequency in. 4 months seems long enough to ignore something. Yeah, we can talk about that later. And also in the notes was sweep Adabot library checks for necessary updates related to Travis.com migrations. Yeah, we can talk about frequency in or whatever it is that you would like to pick up. All right, next up is TG Techie.
Hi. So this past week, more than a week, but I've been porting my text support code from my own quote-unquote library and added it to the CircuitPython GFX, which was very fun. And I also added round rectangle to GFX, which is one of my favorite shapes. And then I learned about a thing called linting, which was fun and a complete blast. But I can tell I still have a lot more to learn about the whole process, and I'm excited to do so. This next week, I should be ordering a board that runs CircuitPython. So I'd love a little hardware review to double check it'll be compatible, if anyone's willing. And yeah, and then back to working on the tricorder. eventually I'll port the GUI code to work with a GFX or display.io library.
Nice. Yeah, feel free to post the hardware into the CircuitPython chat, and if there's anyone who has that skill, they can take a look at that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Phil, I think, is lurking, so for now. So next up is Brent.
Hello. I've been working on radio modules with CircuitPython, working on a guide currently for doing Raspberry Pi with radio modules, so like the RFM96, RFM69, and it'll be a nice guide because we don't have anything like that right now for both of them. And that's basically what I'm up to for the end of 2018.
Excellent. Thank you. Carter, what are you up to?
Not a lot CP this week with the holidays and everything. Just a smattering of small, little low-hanging fruit things. I think there was a gas sensor issue I came across, and I did some sanity checking on that. And there was the issue for that OLED display that I said we need a driver for, but it turns out we already have a driver for it. So just basically verify that that will work, and issue closed. That's about all I can remember for now.
All right. Excellent. Next up is C. Grover.
Let's say I wrapped up some tests on that NeoTrellis M4 Stemma to Eurorack synth test that was shown in the Python for Microcontrollers newsletter. And that involved building an external MCP 4725 DAC module, a couple of breakout boards from it, and so I could get 5 volts out of an op-amp buffer that I put on that. And it was all powered from the Stemma 3.3 volt power supply. And I'm sending, so that was this week. That was kind of time consuming. A side note is that Eurorack synthesizers are half-assuming, potentially budget. So if you're going to get into Eurorack synths, you have to give up food for at least a week or so to afford it. Anyway, 3 lines off to Osh Park, and one is a Stemma classic MIDI interface. I'm gonna keep working on Stemma for a while here because it's pretty flexible, and I've built it into a couple of my DIY Eurorack synths. And it's pretty handy for getting all sorts of stuff attached to it. But I need a classic MIDI interface, so I designed one with opto-isolated inputs and buffered outputs and all that kind of stuff. And it'll be compatible with CircuitPython through the UART library on the Trellis M4.
Wow. Very
That's
cool. Thank you. All right, next up is Dan.
So there have been, since Scott was away, I've reviewed some PRs that we would have shared all together. And then mostly I've been working on the Bluetooth stuff on the NRF. I have advertising working. Once you connect, it doesn't work, but there's a bunch of stuff we can do just with advertising, like beacons or one-way data transmission. So I may sort of polish that off enough so that I can get a release going that people can test, and we will try to debug the BLE, the connection stuff. It's difficult. There's all kinds of other BLE devices in the house, like headphones that interfere with things, and you have to filter them out.
Yeah.
And then last week, I'm not sure if I said this last week or not, but I finished the migration from travisci.org to .com. And also went through all the repos and cleaned up, read the docs. There were a few of those that were not using webhooks, and there were some with the wrong webhooks. So there was kind of a general pass through that to fix all that up. And I think they're all working out pretty well right now.
Yeah,
so we're
thank you for
completely
doing
off
that.
of travisci.org as far as I know.
Excellent. Thank you so much for doing that.
Okay, welcome.
All right, next up is Jerry.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time this week playing with the ESP AT control stuff, and one of the things that I really wanted to do is get the function going so I could post data to my Adafruit IO feeds, and that's been fun to work on, and it's working now. So you can really easily use the new webhooks connection that's out on Adafruit IO and send stuff through these coprocessors. So it opens up a lot of opportunities there. Also been doing spending a lot of time making sure that it's all working on the particle argon board, which is self-contained, has both the NRF52840 and the ESP32 on the same board. So you don't even need a second board. And
Nice.
it works well on there. And I'm trying to do some work on the guide, trying to help out with that for this. I'm such a find guide writing so difficult, but I'm trying. And then there's a quick PR just to update some of the stuff for the NRF builds. And then a recent issue's come up that in about if people are trying to use the AT firmware, there can be an issue in trying to load it to the ESP8266. I'm just trying to track that down and come up with a way around this to avoid a potential issue that's been occurring. So if people run into it, ping me. There is a workaround. It's a little cumbersome, but it can be done.
Okay, good to know. Thank you for figuring that out. All right, and with that is status updates. So the last section of the meeting we like to call lovingly in the weeds. It's where we open up discussion to more longer form discussion, things that people want to talk about that maybe they want to get some help from other people or just have some questions that someone else can answer. If you have topics that aren't already in the notes, while we're actually doing other people's in the weeds, please post them into the text chat and I will add them to the notes, and then that way we will have it, and we won't worry about sitting around waiting for people to come up with ideas. So the first thing we have in the notes is from Phil. And Phil, do you want to go ahead and take it away?
Yeah. Hello. Just want to make sure you can hear me.
I can.
Okay. So for our CircuitPython repository, GitHub has a feature called Topics.
Mm-hmm.
We only have CircuitPython. So we probably, I don't know how beneficial it is, but it's a feature. There's more things you can add. So I thought we would look at it if you want to go to github.com/Adafruit/CircuitPython. I thought we would at least carry forward what MicroPython has. So MicroPython has MicroPython. They have Python embedded in microcontroller. And I thought we would at least have all of those. And in addition to that, CPython, Python 3, education, and beginner. As you type words, if you're one of the people who can change our repo, it has a pull down list of all those things.
Mm-hmm.
So if anyone has any other suggestions, I'm going to put this in the notes right now. Let me know. And unless there's objections, I'll just add them and you can always change them. But that's pretty much it with that. So they're in the notes now if you need them.
Excellent. Yeah, so does anyone else have any other ideas of things that we could add? This is to make it so that if people are searching for things on GitHub, I believe the repo will come up. So we want to make it easier to find CircuitPython for people who are looking for particular things. All right, I'm going to go ahead and say that it sounds good. So yeah, I think we can add those. And if we want to add more later, we always can. And if we want to change them, we always can. But I think it's a great start.
What I'll do is so everything I do, I also put in a newsletter. So I'll put in the newsletter, hey, we have topics.
Yeah.
Now, and feel free to suggest some. Okay. Oh, and last on that is I really like that we're Pythonic.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that we should put there too. Like, hey, if you really like CPython, if you like real Python, this is for you. Okay. Next up, Scott has a post, and I helped out with that. I put in the newsletter. It's the CircuitPython 2019. Your feedback welcome. So do take a look at it and get in touch with us with all things that you want to see in CircuitPython in 2019. That's also in the newsletter. And Next up, this is, since it's in the weeds, in the Discord chat right now. That's a preview that I just posted. Discord approved, Nordic approved us using their logo, which is really rare. We said, hey, like we're doing all this stuff with the Nordic stuff for Python or CircuitPython 4. Can we have Blinka wrapped around the Nordic logo? And I thought they were going to say no, but they're like, well, like thanks for asking. You never know what marketing's going to say. And they said yes.
Nice.
So yeah, so that's our CircuitPython 4 poster. Yay. So I thought that was cool. So I guess Hug Report for Nordic, if we were going to go back in time,
Yeah.
for some Hug Report, allows, if you love your brand, set it free sometimes. Yeah, and then on New Year's Day, if all goes well, we're going to have a live video of some of the cool stuff we've been doing with the ESP32 as a module with CircuitPython. So there'll be a live camera, and when people star our GitHub repo, you'll see it light up a star. It'll go ding, and we'll just have that feed running as long as live video feeds are allowed to run on these things. So if you have any other ideas, this is part of what Lamore was talking about for a lot of cool IoT stuff. And we could display that on screen eventually, but this one will just be a physical little widget. It's a light up star, and it'll have the number of stars on a display for folks to play around with. We did the cheer lights version of this on New Year's Eve, where we have a video on our YouTube channel, and it'll be in the newsletter next week, where people could change the lights, the cheer lights around the world, and that was using CircuitPython and an ESP32.
Nice.
That's the weeds.
All right. Excellent. We have some more stuff in the weeds that there's not a name with.
Oh, yeah, that was for me.
All right. Excellent.
Sorry. It's just two things. Now that we're moving away, you're going to be dropping support for a couple of chips like the ESP 8266, and I think we're formally, saying that we're not going to. The ESP32 is not going to be in the future.
Correct.
It's just worth mentioning that as these questions come up especially on Discord, and it's probably worth mentioning people that they can go to MicroPython. They can use them as co-processors. First of all, that's the best thing. But we may get a lot of questions, and we want to help people feel comfortable moving it over to CircuitPython if they really want to. And then the same sort of thing comes about with the Feather NRF 52832, because as I understand it, we'll be dropping support for that as well. And so again, just steering people in the direction, it's well supported by Arduino. There's the minute whole package. So just, things to keep in mind as people ask questions about what they can and can't do with those. And if anybody has any other thoughts about how we should be treating them.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll be updating the guides for sure. I'll do that and sweep through. But basically, yeah, as a 4.0, I think once we get to beta, that's when I'll update the guides, and we'll also archive or deprecate the support of AMPI, because it's just too difficult for us to maintain something that's for a hardware that we don't use. So if anybody, if people want to fork AMPI and still use it for MicroPython, that's great. But we kind of have to move towards the experience that we think people love the most, which is having the USB drive. And I think it's worth it to spend a couple dollars more to get a chip that supports it.
Great.
Yeah, absolutely. USB is important.
Yeah, and on that note, this is Phil here. We're project driven, so we'll show here's all this. It's not an if, it's not which one's better. It's more like if you want to do these types of projects and spend most of your time making the project and having fun with it, here's a way to use CircuitPython and ESP32 as a coprocessor. However, if you have unlimited time and you just want to spend $1 on a chip or whatever an ESP32 is, there's MicroPython, and here's examples out there. We cover that in our newsletter and cool projects on our blog. But I think the more projects we have that shows how this makes sense, and you can have more time with what you want to do, the better.
Excellent. Okay, next up in the notes, we have some stuff from Roy. Roy, do you want to go ahead and take it away?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things I'm trying to figure out is the best way to have the pixel buff support auto write support. So the pixel buff manages the, I guess it implements the sort of the indexing support directly in C. And I can think of two different ways of making it so auto write is called or is supported, either building it right into pixel buff via callback. So you need some way to call Python to do the NeoPixel write or .star write or so on, or make it a method. I'm not sure. I sort of need someone's guidance on how to go digging in the code in CircuitPython to do that well so that it just works. Maybe something to talk about afterwards, and maybe Dan can help. But the question, I guess, is a callback or is a abstract method a better way of implementing that?
So you're saying you want to call the low-level NeoPixel write and stuff like that? I mean, you can call that from C.
That's the idea. Is I need a way to call that from C. So the class hierarchy will be there's pixel buff in CircuitPython, and then RGB LED will be the abstract base class for .star and NeoPixel, and that will implement the very minimal changes to init, anything that's needed for like things like show we'll call NeoPixel write in the basic NeoPixel implementation. It would also give us a way to, if we ever have DMA support, figure out how to hook that in either here or via callbacks. So either a callback or a abstract method. My feeling from looking around the code base is it might be hard to implement a abstract method. I'm not positive about that though, in the C side of things.
Could you keep in the, so pixel buff, are there pixel buff objects or is it just a module?
It's a object.
So you could have a pointer to the underlying, have a handle or something to the underlying hardware implementation and call it directly from pixel buff rather than going out to Python and back in again. Since NeoPixel write is written in C anyway, all these,
Yeah.
you know, the .star stuff, I mean, I would figure out some way. I actually didn't realize that pixel buff was a superclass of NeoPixel and so forth. I thought that you were going to have, it was just going to provide hardware support and you would call it from the NeoPixel or .star classes.
That was the original idea, and then the code ended up reshaping itself after a discussion with Scott into using sort of object-oriented design, and it's actually cleaned the code up, surprisingly.
So, well, I would say is can you put some can you add some extra field, like even a pointer to the module or something that you could, when you create the pixel buff class that says what kind of thing it, like call this thing at the lowest level.
Yeah, I could look into doing that.
Yeah, and so that it wouldn't necessarily be all that Pythonic necessarily, but it would work because
that's what
there is no mechanism for. I'm actually surprised that it works because in general there's no mechanism in MicroPython for supporting Python versions of the native classes. I'm surprised.
Yeah, it's surprising, but it just seems to work. I'm in the middle of testing it.
Okay.
If it doesn't work as expected, then I'll have to wrap everything, but that's what the RGB LED class is there for anyway, is to provide the driver, and also when you don't have pixel buff support in the hardware, there'll be a Python fallback.
Okay. So yeah, so I would just say provide some, like when you call the constructor or whatever for pixel buff, then pass in something that indicates what the lowest level.
Yes, that's actually a good idea, because then anything that already has direct hardware output support from a buffer can just be called. And I think, I can't remember, I have to look at the .star code. I haven't played with that in a little while. I've been focusing on NeoPixel, but it has NeoPixel write, like you said, which takes a single or two arguments, which be very easy to pass in a arbitrary first argument somehow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we get the benefit of no callback into Python. It's just direct C code, so it'll be a lot faster.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so see if that works out, and then we can talk about it. If that doesn't work, think about some other way of doing it.
And
MicroPython just added subclassing of native modules. It's not, we don't have it yet, but they added it in upstream, and we could cherry pick that if we needed it. So.
Yeah, and I guess the second part of the question is, I guess we probably want to maintain exact compatibility of the NeoPixel class as well as the .star one, so that people don't have to rewrite code.
I would say, yeah, that's code is pretty pervasive, so we can avoid.
So some of the work will be how to test that to make sure it works. Scott had suggested we almost at some point do a hard fork to switch the NeoPixel and .star libraries to use the pixel buff code or the RGB LED as a base. I'm not sure how clean and easy that will be, and I'm wondering if we for version 4 have, or even if we get this into 4, it might actually go to 5 at this point. If we have a transitionary period where people who want to use pixel buff have to go a different route, and then by the time we get to the next major release, we should be able to switch over to it.
Well, if you can do it by catching exceptions from imports that don't exist, then that's the easy way for now. And then when we do the next major version release and we have a bundle with new versions of NeoPixel and .star, then I think that's the right time to do that, so that either the 4 bundle or the 5 bundle would correspond to the version.
Yep, I think that's what we'll have to do. Okay.
Yeah, I think that would work out. I don't see that as a problem, because we're making other such changes. Right now, the 3 and the 4 bundles are the same, but they don't have to be. So.
Right. Okay. I guess that's the answer to my questions. The bundles don't have to be the same in the future.
No, it's just right. We decided to make a 4 bundle even though it was the same as 3, so we do something like this. I mean,
yeah,
previously it had only been due to like MPY format changes, but this is as good a reason as any. So
yeah, what I'm doing currently is I'm just dumping the neopixel.py and .star.py into my RGB LED repo, and those could be moved back somewhere else in the future.
Yeah. All right. Well, see how it works out, and then and people can test it, by replacing those particular libraries, and then eventually we can make it be part of a big bang of a major version release.
Cool.
All right. And you had one more question, Roy?
Yeah, so this is sort of a came out of the Trellis M4 board being awesome, and I want to use more Python with it and less Arduino. So I had a bunch of fun with the FFT code that is in the examples and added some features to it, but I'd really rather have been driving that from CircuitPython. Doing that kind of math in CircuitPython is currently not real easy unless you do it in C. Have we got any kind of plans in the roadmap for how we might go about doing things like FFTs or other intense math? Probably have to run it mostly from C, so maybe some kind of math helper library that would help out, or maybe adding things like FFTs directly to a CircuitPython.
I think it would make
I
sense
think that for that,
ahead.
we've chatted about it. It definitely would have to be M4 only because it would be, would come in hardware. There's just no way to do it in software. I don't even know if we'd have a helper. It's tough to split apart FFT just because it's like when you split it apart, you're like, oh, look, you're just doing all this math. So I think some things like filters and FFTs, where you really need the C code, we would want to add that as sort of a native assist. Doing that's sort of a long-term thing that we've chatted about. Where do you want to open up an issue and look at it? I know Dave Estells also was curious about it. And he wrote a guide about how to implement small additions to CircuitPython so that you could rely on that guide on how to do it. Of course, we'd have to come up with an API, but maybe we'd come up with the buckets and then it would return back the even and odd array of data.
Yep. Okay.
There's an entry. I'll put it in the chat. There's a forum post about DSP instructions on the M4 and about taking real advantage of them, which the compiler doesn't necessarily do. So you can take Paul Stoffergen from the Teensy Man wrote some interesting stuff in there. So you might want to take a look at that.
Yeah, certainly lots of potential here.
Okay. Sounds like we got that sorted, and I don't see any other issues for In the Weeds. So I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. We're almost to an hour here. I want to thank everybody who made it today. We had many more people than I expected, which is excellent. I want to say one more time, thank you to everyone for everything that was done in 2018. It was an amazing year, and 2019 is only going to be better. I want to remind everyone that the meeting will not be happening next Monday, which is New Year's Eve, and will not be happening again until the following Monday. So we're going to be skipping next week entirely. It's been, I believe it's pinned message. If it's not, I will add it to the pinned messages so that everyone remembers. Inevitably, someone's going to ask, and we will just tell you. Not a big deal. But again, thank you to everyone. Without you, we would just be writing code. We need you to be our community, and we're super, super excited that you are. So thank you very much to everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your year and a wonderful rest of your holiday. And we will see you again in 2019.
Thanks.